Hi, I'm Jonathan Lemus, professor at EPRI at University Francisco Marroquín. Today we have the opportunity to talk with Professor Randy Simmons. He's the author of the book Economics, Water, and the Environment. And today we want to talk a little bit about his ideas on the management of water, a common pool resource. Professor Simmons, thank you for this interview. You talk about a lot of concepts in your work about water, but something that calls my attention is that you argue that we need to focus more on transaction costs rather than externalities. Can you tell us what you mean by those two concepts, why there is a debate on that in the literature?
Generally, economists, when they see like a polluter who's putting something in the water, it comes downstream and it affects someone else downstream. You can think of it as also in the air. But the question is, well, that normally is called an externality, and you identify the cause of the externality, and so that's where you focus. But often, people can solve problems themselves if it doesn't cost them too much to come to a decision. So if there are thousands of people downstream, all of them trying to work together is pretty hard because those are the transaction costs. Mm-hmm. So, but if we would focus government actions on reducing transaction costs, then people could come to decisions and solve problems. That happened in the United States for a couple hundred years using sort of common law approaches as opposed to regulatory approaches to what we call externalities.
Okay, so this follows a lot the line on the public choice theory, right? That argues that not all the problems can be solved by government because government also fails.
Right.
The regulators are the same people or have the same human traits than the people that are being regulated. So what examples in your work, in your academic work, have you seen of that? Of first, regulators failing at solving problems with water management and citizens being successful in management of this common pool resource?
One of the more interesting things about government trying to fix problems is that sometimes they make things worse. The example is, I'm forgetting the name of the actual cities, but a city who pulled all of its drinking water out of Lake Michigan. There was another city who was polluting a river that flowed into, they were dumping their sewage into this river that flowed into Lake Michigan. So they were polluting the water. And the city that was getting the polluted water sued the other city to get them to stop. So this is the action between them using a court system, and the court said you have to reduce the amount of pollution you're putting into in the river and then into the lake. But once the Congress passed the Clean Water Act, and the Clean Water Act didn't require the polluting city to be as clean as the court had required. And so they just followed the Clean Water Act and made the water dirtier than it had been before. So the Clean Water Act, because it superseded the court decision, ended up making the water worse.
And this is an example of how government not always gets things right. But what happens with these associations? You mentioned some of them in a paper that you wrote, associations that gather to manage, in this case, water resources.
I wrote about the American West and how when miners got to the West and pioneers who needed to grow crops, they had to divert water out of streams into canals and then distribute it on their fields for the farmers, and the miners were moving water long distances in order to use in mining. And they developed a system called first in time, first in right. The first person who diverts has that right. And it became a clear property right. And so there, along a river, for example, you might have multiple diverters, multiple canals coming off of it. And then within those canals were managed by local people. They created a cooperative. And they created their own rules, and they hired a water master, and they managed the water in that system amazingly well. And the reason is because the property rights are clear. So I'm on one of those canals, and I'm able to trade water. I'm able to purchase more water. It's really simple. I don't have to use the government at all. I'm just able to operate within this cooperative, this company, the Spring Creek Water Company that I own shares in.
And you also mentioned that even though they been very successful in managing water, they always find challenges. As anything, there are challenges. How do they solve problems of free riding or problems of enforcement of rules? What do you do about that?
The water company hires a water master,
okay,
who is sort of the sheriff of the water, and he makes sure that people are using water when they should. If there's a conflict, then you just call a water master and he comes and solves the conflict. I had an example of that. I was taking my water turn, and I saw somebody walking up the road, and he looked really angry, and he got to me and started to yell at me, telling me that I was stealing his water. So I called the water master. The water master showed up and got out his schedule, and the guy who was angry at me said, "See, it's my water turn on Wednesday at noon." And the water master said, "Well, today's Tuesday." And I mean, I didn't have to get in an argument. I just just got the person who was the enforcer to come. That's how we deal with free riders, because people will take water out of their turns if there's not a way of enforcing it.
And one last question. This seems to be a case in the American West. But do you know, or do you think that these sort of arrangements can take place anywhere, that citizens can overcome these collective action problems and manage their resources?
Yes, they can, anywhere. And if you read the work of Eleanor Ostrom that got her the Nobel Prize in economics, she shows examples all over the world of people being able to manage a common pool resource locally and effectively. And the trick is to just figure out what the rules are and see if governments will allow people to actually solve problems themselves. And that's part of the problem, is often government gets in the way of solving problems.
Well, thank you, Professor Simmons. That's an important discussion that we will have in Guatemala. Water is very important in this country. And I'm sure that your academic insights will be very helpful in this discussion. So thank you for your time, and we'll keep posting more interviews on very important topics for discussion.